We are live from Hong Kong for a Chris Before Coffee special. James, what are you seeing?
We're right in the middle of the protest here in Nathan Road. We're slap bang in the middle. They have a press conference right now. And you can see all the media here, the international media with the big cameras right in front of us.
So when you say a press conference, this is a distributed press conference by a distributed organisation of people, Occupy Central.
Right, it's a scheduled speech, I should say. That probably is a little bit more accurate.
And who is it that's speaking?
Generally, it's organizers with sometimes local legislators, professors.
And can you tell us what the numbers are like with the people? Are there more people today than there were yesterday?
Yes, numbers have grown once again because today is a public holiday. It's today and tomorrow is a public holiday here in Hong Kong. So the numbers have grown with the extra addition of people bringing their families. So today we've seen a lot of children, families, and the feeling and the mood was a bit more festive and less serious and protest-like than the last 2 days. So you could see for the first time today people were taking selfies. And a couple of days ago that really wasn't appropriate here. So it felt like people wanted to record that they were a part of the history. So they would take pictures. A lot of pictures were taken compared to the last 2 days. So there's definitely a shift in the atmosphere, in the mood. It feels a lot safer as well, because we've been assured that the police will not come in here and they'll leave us to demonstrate peacefully. And they've demonstrated that today. They did prove that by, there was an incident at one of the supply stations, and we were actually scared the police would come and shut down the supply stations. Instead, they protected us and arrested the troublemaker, and they really did help us and secured our supplies, our essentials.
Now, James,
so there's a bit between the police.
Good connection. Can I ask you to talk about what you told me about just before you came on air? Because something happened to you yesterday, didn't it?
Well, a few hours ago, as you know, I've been volunteering here for the last 3 days at the food and medical stations, and around 4 this afternoon, a pro-Beijing person, or we think it might be a provocateur actually, because they were hanging around the volunteer station for about 10 minutes and they were acting very normally. But suddenly, she then turns into a crazy person, starts screaming, pulling supplies, throwing supplies everywhere, and just really causing chaos and making a mess. That's her. And what happened was police was called and she was arrested for assaulting 2 volunteers and destroying property.
Wow, so how are you feeling now?
I'm great. Oh, what is happening? Oh, wow. There's an ambulance coming through right now, so everyone's moving out the way, as you can see. Everyone just got up. Can you... So we're clearing way now for the ambulance to pass by, because in the mainstream media they were reporting that we're blocking ambulances and public essential public transport, and it's just not true. As you can see, anytime we see an emergency vehicle, everyone just gets up and gets out the way and lets the emergency vehicle pass through and do their jobs. So as you can see here, people have all gotten up, and now they're officially making way for the car to pass by.
Yeah, I saw some mainstream media reports on how violent it was, and it's like, no, that wasn't what I saw from talking to you yesterday.
Yeah, no, the only violence that we have witnessed here has been not from the pro-democracy camp, but from the opposition. They've been the ones causing problems. There was another incident the other day where one of the opposition people tried to run us over. They sped through in their cars in one of the zones where people were sitting down, and they almost ran over about 40 people. It was really a miracle no one got hurt, and they have since arrested that person. And he claimed he was just using the public road, which is what it's there for.
And I want to say something else, which is the BBC were actually reporting that the numbers of people were getting smaller earlier on. So that's the reason why I asked you just now. So that's not true. You're saying there are more people and there are children there too. There are families there.
I definitely wouldn't say it's gotten smaller. It's definitely gotten much bigger with the addition of the families. However, I'd say now, though, it has gotten smaller now since it is evening. It's almost midnight here. So the crowd is smaller compared to the afternoon, but as you can see, it's still packed here on Nathan Road for about 10 blocks. So can you see the lights that people are waving around, the red lights? These are to actually help the ambulance.
What are the red lights?
Well, they're coordinating people to just get out of the way and you know, please move out of the way and let the ambulance through.
That's great.
Because in the mainstream media, they're reporting in the mainstream media that, you know, we're blocking ambulances and that we're making their life difficult. They can't do their jobs. Clearly, you can see that's just not true.
And you can see a lot of people are just sitting on the road too. I mean, they're not doing anything violent. They're just sitting there.
Nope, everyone's sitting. This is the most peaceful protest I've ever witnessed.
It's called the polite protest. That's what I've been hearing on social media.
It is. I've seen people scrub the floors, picking up cigarettes. These are just things you don't see at a protest, not just picking up food, but literally scrubbing the floors.
Well, I don't think you could ask for much more out of protesters. I mean, to be that polite and clean up, I mean, that is a model protest, in my opinion.
Showing the rest of the world how it should be done. And of course, we're breaking with the regular format just before coffee to bring you the breaking news. But I am joined here by Rhian Lewis, who's with me at Google Campus in London. And yeah, so as soon as James told us what had happened to him, we thought, wow, this has to go up to the top. So, James, are you able to tell us any more about your experiences with the police and so on? Because in this case, you had to be helped by the police.
Yeah, we were actually helped by the police at the station. So when they arrived, I actually was able to hear many things at the station as well. Don't know if I should talk about it, but because they don't know that I actually understand Cantonese, so they think I only know English. So I was actually able to hear some of their chatter because you know they speak like I'm not there when they don't think you speak when they don't think you know the language. And some of the things that I heard were they're complaining. And they're not enjoying what they're doing of having to police their own citizens. And it's the people up top. It's not your regular detectives or street patrolmen who are against us. No, actually, one of them, when I was at the hospital getting some treatment, one of them actually took me aside and really asked me if I could please tell everyone, citizens, but their superiors were not allowing them to appear favorably towards us or even mingle and talk with us. That's something that's been discouraged and something I witnessed myself when one of the detectives wanted to ask me some questions and I dragged them away.
I think you're being censored a bit, James, because...
So it's obvious that it's the superiors.
Yeah, I think they're onto him. I think they've intercepted the connection. There were some keywords there that we used. Can you hear us, James? That's very interesting. Perfect connection.
Well, that would be a very good censorship to be able to pick it up
Maybe
real
if I
time.
start reading from my authentic red book, they'll let us back on.
Oh, brilliant! Read some communism.
Well, I can't. It's it's an authentic one from really in Chinese, so I can't. You know, I can't. I know a little bit, but I can't really read it. But I can go look for an English one.
Well, there we go. So I did actually see some pictures earlier from Hong Kong, Rhian, showing some government officials up in the skyscrapers with lenses and like cameras looking down at the protesters. Because one of the things they like to do, which way is my camera going here, is they like to take pictures of people at protests. Like I'm definitely on a list from many years ago. And then rumor has it, Theo broke the news yesterday, I think, by saying that they're already working on face recognition software from Facebook so they can get targeted drone strikes. Right. So now it's like no collateral damage. Yeah. That's how it's going to be sold, right? The military-industrial complex is going to market this on the basis that we don't need collateral damage anymore. We can just identify the enemy from their face recognition fed to us straight by Facebook. So whilst we're waiting for James to come back, why don't we talk a little bit about you and where you're here from and what you're here to talk about, because we're both from London, but you're a member of something called the London, remind me again, how
London Bitcoin Women.
London Bitcoin Women. Let me get this up on the screen.
So I'm co-organising this with Magda, who tweets as Bitcoin Mama. I'm sure a lot of people who are WCN viewers and members would already know of Magda. And essentially, I've been working on contract in Berlin, where my good friend Anna organises an event aimed at attracting women to the world of Bitcoin. So it's a networking space for women who already are interested in Bitcoin, but more importantly, it's a welcoming environment for any woman who wants to learn about Bitcoin, how to buy it, how to spend it, what it means, what the implications of it are, and might not feel kind of sufficiently into it at the beginning to walk into a room full of strangers, most of whom are probably going to be guys, and to learn a little bit about Bitcoin and also to have fun at the same time, because I'm just arrived back in London today. And I'm missing Berlin already. I have to say the events that Anna's organised over there have been such good fun. They've just been really, really nice evenings. I've met really interesting people, and the whole point is some people might not feel terribly comfortable about the idea of having a single gender space. Chris and I were talking about this earlier, but I think whether you agree with it or not, the principle is that in order to learn about something, people have to feel welcomed, and a lot of the events are perceived, correctly or otherwise, as being quite technical, attended by people who are kind of in the know, or who are maybe slightly corporate in many senses. I mean, in London and some of the big cities, a lot of the cryptocurrency meetups are kind of aimed at people working in the space. So there seems to be a lack of a kind of community thing where people can come along, meet people, ask questions and not feel intimidated about their lack of knowledge. And I think it's really important to share our knowledge. If Bitcoin is to succeed, which obviously I firmly believe it is going to, it needs to have widespread adoption, and not just as an investment tool, which unfortunately a lot of people simply use it as an investment tool. They're not transacting with it. It needs to be out there, kind of in the wild, people spending it, people using it or other cryptocurrencies as a form of currency. And as we know, a lot of spending power is in the hands of women, and although obviously because of its anonymous nature, we don't know how many transactions are made by women.
But we can say of money normally that about 60 to 70% of the purchasing power is owned by women in the West. And this is because most women control the household budget for most families. And it's not so much that she has discretionary spending. It's that she has the veto. She has the executive power of veto on purchases,
Yes.
as I understand the research when I've looked at it before. I used to work in advertising, so I'm somewhat qualified to talk about it. And whenever you made your advert, you were always thinking about who had the final say over the purchasing decision. So, for example, if you were selling toys, you wouldn't aim it at the kids. You'd aim it at mother, because mother's going to be the one that gets the purse out.
With the purse strings, which is the kind of cliche, isn't it? And also, again, we were talking earlier about, and you know this coming from an advertising background, the human factor of imitative behaviour. You know, humans are we're pack animals. We tend to imitate each other in the same way that animals in the wild imitate each other. And if you're looking at a whole group of people with whom you seem to have superficially nothing in common, being interested in something, you're less likely, I think, to want to go and engage with it and be interested in it than if you see people like you interacting with it.
Let's take a look at the Bitcoin community as it is at the moment. And if you're not familiar with the Trollbox, you should definitely check it out. It's on BTC-e.com. One of the stalwarts of this industry, and we're just going to do a little bit of a misogyny finding. It didn't take much. I just typed in the keyword bitch into the Trollbox archive, and this is pretty prevalent. Like, it's a majority male, I would say under 35, sitting in their bedroom complaining about the things they always complain about. And then, of course, there is the other Trollbox, bitcointalk.org, which in the last sort of 6 to 12 months, I would say, has been shunned by the Bitcoin Foundation. They haven't been turning up onto this forum as much. I think there's been a concerted effort to move away from these kind of spaces. But I think it's fair to say, and no one's going to criticize me for saying this, that this is a male-dominated environment. Like, look at this lovely chap here. It's like being in a zoo. You're just watching these people as an anthropologist would, you know, watch some kind of, I don't know what I'm trying to say, but these people are really horrid. And it does take a lot of guts to be in there. So from what you're saying, it sounds like you just want to set up an inviting environment.
Yeah,
so that we have more diversity in this.
Yeah, that's right. It's not like saying things shouldn't exist, but the point of view is, the point is that if people are Googling Bitcoin and the only things they come across are kind of these very, these environments that are quite cliquey and, as Chris said, quite sort of male-dominated, there's no current alternative. We're trying to provide an alternative. We're not saying one shouldn't exist, one shouldn't be as it is. Everyone can have their own opinions about that. We're just trying to provide an alternative environment where people can come along, be informed, be welcomed, and have fun.
Oh, that sounds great. So, do we have a so from Hong Kong rising up protests to women in Bitcoin, or just is it just diversity within the space in general? Our power comes from our diversity, no? Anyone?
Sure, of course. I mean, yeah, definitely. I was just checking out. Sorry, I haven't been listening the whole time, but I caught the last part. So I'll do a screen share. I was just checking out, you know, like you said, not the Trollbox, but something more so-called legit, like Inside Bitcoins, and it's just a bunch of dudes, you know, with suits, basically. You know, here we go. So, well, they don't really have suits on, but well, some do. But I mean, it's just like a, you know, here's another guy, here's another guy, there's another guy, there's another guy, there's another guy. Oh wait, wait, okay. So two women, 3. So it's not so many, you know, like you said, just in pure numbers. And it gets and even from my if I go to one of these things, it also gets boring. It's just the same old kind of, you know, way of talking, and you know, it's like you said, it's not diverse at all.
It's not really even specifically a gender thing. When we were talking about it earlier, I was pointing out that a lot of people might need a reason to get involved in Bitcoin. And even if you're a guy and you go to a site like that, you might just think, well, I've got nothing in common with these people. What's it all about? What's in it for me?
Sure. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, sure. There's all kinds of things. It's not only for VCs or tech geeks or whatever. It could be for, you know, anybody. And yeah, that's a really good point. There's different avenues of you know, communicating with people and getting together with people that we could explore. And yeah, there's power in diversity. You know, if we're all just one kind of people, we don't learn anything. You know, it's just a big echo chamber. And you know, that's not really interesting. It's quite boring, actually, in the end. And then everyone gets tired of it, and they just stop.
Yeah, there's more to it than just the financial aspect, too. I mean, people can make art, write songs about crypto. There's the whole aspect of the mathematics behind it. For one thing, if you're interested in that with the cryptography, then there's the art aspect. I mean, I really like the way Cointelegraph does their art for their website, and I don't know if they have a print edition or not, but the art on that is really good. It's like a water paint or something almost. And then there's, you know, all the little Bitcoin graphics, like the one Theo has behind him there on the wall, is another example. But I mean, there is a lot of different aspects that you can go into with Bitcoin beyond the financial realm of it. And that's why it annoys me too when people just talk about, you know, well, I'm not interested in finances or financial markets and stuff. Well, it's not just about that. And that also annoys me too when they want to just call Bitcoin money, because it's not just money. There's a lot more to it. It's a protocol, and money is just a small part of it.
That's right. I think the profit motive is just a vector, and people need to understand that you can think of the profit motive from an incentive engineering point of view as being like a laser beam. We know that it's very predictable. We know that if you give people profit incentives in order to achieve goals, that they will adopt it ruthlessly, and they will try to make those numbers get bigger and bigger. But rather than fixating on that, rather than running the entire global economy on something so trivial, what we should be doing is thinking about how we can incentivize the kind of behavior we want to see in society. So Satoshi laid this out, let's reward honesty more than fraud. That would be a good start, especially since the current system actually rewards fraud more than it does honesty. And then also I'm experimenting at the minute with you know, this blockchain-based camera that can...
Time stamping and proving with the Merkle roots and stuff that you have digital proof that something occurred at an exact time, and there's no way that you can go back and change that. So I think that is very valuable. The writing the contracts into the blockchain, like you were talking about the other day with what was a parallel agreement. I think the multi-signature wallets and things like that are just the tip of the iceberg for that stuff. I mean, there's more things like that that are yet to be explored.
Yeah, that's right. And this is what we were talking about earlier on. I'm still experimenting with it at the moment, where I recorded with video a verbal agreement between Pablo Martin and the producer of the Deep Wallet movie, who he'd interviewed. And he was asking, let me see if I can pull up my copy of Premiere, because I'm just experimenting at the moment with different video editing tools. So here's the video. Let's go to a part of the video where we've got, so there's Pablo, okay, and he's reading the contract, and I'm documenting this the whole time. Now, in law, you have this idea of the meeting of minds. That is, and in the United Kingdom, I should say, in England and Wales certainly, anything that is spoken is as good as written in law. So just because you have a verbal agreement, often lawyers refer to this as something in the background, right? This is an agreement that took place in the background, with the written contract being in the foreground of the agreement. Really, you can think of all contracts as being incomplete, that the contract itself is just a checkpoint in time to say this is what the two parties read and agreed to at this point in time. But gradually, as things change, as life does, and throws up unexpected events, you end up having to work around the agreement. You end up having to modify the agreement. Now, Pablo was reading the agreement, and he disagreed with a lot of what he called the draconian clauses in there. I'm not sure I'm going to be able to get lucky enough to pull it up, but here we go. And so he said, I disagree with the draconian statements as underlined and more. And I actually got him to present the producer of the movie on camera, and they clearly have a meeting of minds in the video. Now, I timestamped that into the blockchain, as you just saw there. Let me just pull that back up again. So I then copied that to my hard disk. I went into the command line. This is not user-friendly at the moment. I ran a SHA-256 on that file. I uploaded it to the blockchain, and I uploaded it to BitTorrent. And that's just so that I could get an initial timestamp. That's just to prove that that video either existed at that moment or prior. And then I could kind of take it easy. Now I'm going into Adobe Premiere, video editing package, and I'm going to cut the video down to something a little bit more manageable than 2 GB file. And I'm just going to present the case. And then if anyone wants to say, well, this was a staged thing, they can go back and they can look at the history. They can look at the full version of the copy. I'm going to be doing this in something called GitHub. Sorry, not GitHub, just Git. There's also a social network called GitHub, which makes the whole thing a little bit more social. Let me just see.
You should make it clear that you're not actually uploading the entire video to the blockchain. You're just uploading the MD5 or the SHA-256 to the blockchain. So it's just the code, not the entire video.
That's correct. That's an important distinction to make. I think some people don't understand that we're not talking about uploading massive files into the blockchain. We're just talking about having something called a digest, a cryptographic digest, often referred to as a SHA. And of course, you're a programmer, so maybe you can talk a little bit about this as well, Rhian. And all that does is it acts like a pointer. It proves that that file existed in that state, and once you upload it to the blockchain, it tells you that it existed at that time as well, that time or prior. What I'm working on developing at the moment is a way to prove that it didn't exist any time prior to the event. And you can do that by holding up in the picture. Let's see if this will focus. So this is blockchain.info, and you can see just here, you have something called the Merkle root, which I'm facing this. There we go, it's back to front on my screen. This is the Merkle root here. And the Merkle root changes with every block. And nobody has any way of knowing or anticipating what the Merkle root is going to be. So by putting into the frame a copy of the Merkle root, you prove that that picture, that video couldn't have existed any time prior to that block being issued on the blockchain. Then when you hash it and then timestamp the hash, you prove that that sequence of events cannot have occurred any time prior to the Merkle root being published and discovered, and any time later than the latest block in the blockchain.
And I was just saying to Chris, he should, I know he's already working on disseminating this type of knowledge, but there are groups that are where the disciplines of journalism and development intersect, and I really strongly believe that he should be going out there sharing this knowledge, which I know you are already doing. I just think you should share it more.
Yeah, absolutely, and I only recently thought of doing it, and it was just something, I called myself an open source journalist one day, and I just started timestamping. Not everything I do, but a lot of what I do goes into that website. And I don't always put my name to it, though if you're rigorous enough, you will be able to work out that it's me, because I don't change my Bitcoin address. So you could just go through the blockchain and work out which ones are mine, I guess. But it comes down to this idea of accountability. And there are certain things that I think that need to be private for now. But I want to keep some things private from my contemporaries, my peers, but something I'd be happy for my progenitors. Is that the right word, progenitor? The opposite of an ancestor.
It's the opposite.
And I want the opposite of the ancestor, my future ancestors. I don't mind...
Descendants.
Descendants, yes. I don't mind if they see it. I just don't want any of my contemporaries seeing it. There are legitimate reasons why I wouldn't want you to see all of the videos and all the outtakes of my videos, because I don't want to spoil the illusion. People want a certain narrative. But I also want, as a journalist, I want someone to hold me to account. I want someone to say, right, that piece that you did on this protest looked really biased. Show me your source code. And then I can go through it and we can prove that it existed at that time and it wasn't staged.
It's kind of like a indisputable variant of, is it the 30-year rule? 30-year rule, 30-year rule in politics, isn't it?
Right.
Where papers are disclosed.
That's in America, not here. But
no,
yeah.
and here.
Okay.
So you're talking about a more transparent version of that.
Yeah. Yeah, well, it's more variable. The problem with regular politics and law is that it has to be very general. It responds to unique situations in a very general way. And that's quite dangerous because unique situations require unique responses. And so, yes, it's more efficient and more economical for a centralized governing body to always do the same thing every time a single issue comes up, because otherwise you've got to go in front of a judge. But that doesn't work in all cases, and unfortunately, no one is the average. That has to be a famous quote from someone, but no one is the T 20 to 70 on the bell curve, are they?
No.
Right. So none of us are statistical averages. So yeah, so we went from Hong Kong to women in Bitcoin, to diversity in Bitcoin, to timestamping, open source journalism. What else have we got? We've also got Ksenia joining us.
Hello, yeah. I'm joining late as usual, so I'm listening in.
It's our favourite way to be on the show. Is to be late. We started late anyway, Kay, so don't worry. And
Okay.
you're in a coffee shop.
Yes, that's why I'm muting myself, because it's a bit loud.
Actually, the sound is pretty good. Where are you? Where are you? What country are you in at the moment?
Sweden.
How are things in Sweden?
It's interesting, someone is walking around showing us pictures of a protest.
Yeah, that's James. Actually, James, are you there? Are you back?
I am here, yes. I'm on the headset now.
So tell us what's going on. Do you think you were censored earlier?
It's hard to say. YouTube and Twitter's been in and out all day, so I just think we might be overwhelming the network. I don't want to be too paranoid and say, you know, that they're censoring us at that moment. However, I was talking about some pretty sensitive information. I was talking about some quite sensitive information at the time, which, you know, did make the timing seem a bit odd.
Well, let's not talk any more about that. We can always talk about it on another show, another time. I don't want to put you in any danger. You've already been through the wars and been assaulted. Where's your phone at the moment? What phone are you shooting from? If yours was broken.
Right. So I went to the station and I said, "Hey, do you guys have a spare phone?" You know, after I got assaulted, my phone was damaged as well. Immediately, 3-4 people said, "Use mine, use mine." So I said, "I'm going to use a lot of bandwidth." They said, "It's all right." So it was really, really generous. Once again, the community came through. That's how I'm able to broadcast this right now.
So we should really be open sourcing the methods that you guys are employing, because it sounds like you have got a very anti-fragile method of protesting. That means that it's difficult to defeat someone when they're so reasonable and polite, right? What excuse?
Right, because now we've shown that the violence is not from our camp. It's not from the pro-democracy camp. It's from the opposition camp. That's where all the violence has been. So, and that's something we've encouraged everyone to do, is if anyone is aggressive to you, tries to cause trouble, just try and be the bigger person and just don't react back. They want a reaction. So when we were assaulted at the volunteer station, we didn't do anything. We just accepted it. We got shoved on the ground, but the police came, arrested her, and did their job. So we avoided further conflict.
Random cars that are for sale.
Would you like to know? Well, would you like to know the story to this? Exactly at this juncture, about 48 hours ago, a Mercedes-Benz came charging through this road here, and I just came from the main protest site in the center of Nathan Road and Argyle Street. They tried to run over all the protesters the other day, almost killing maybe 50+ people. However, everyone was able to get up and get out of the way before the car could run them over. So to prevent anyone else from doing this, there's been barricades of private cars. People have just come here and parked their cars so that no one else can hurt the crowd. And every single entrance, all 4 corners have been blocked out by cars, about 5 rows deep everywhere. And these are just people who just did it spontaneously. We put a message on Facebook: if you'd like to help protect the citizens, you know, by parking your car here, please come. And the response has been overwhelming. We've had cars, trucks, parked all over Hong Kong protecting the protesters.
Oh, it does look like people are sitting in the driver's seats, huh?
They're all in here because what's happening is they can't leave. Because if there's an emergency vehicle that wants to come through, they will all immediately move their cars within seconds.
Right, so that was the allegation, wasn't it, that you were blocking access to the emergency services?
Right, which was totally false. And we've witnessed multiple times now. We've had the ambulances come by about 3 times today, and each time they've had a clear path to come through.
Well, that's amazing.
But do you remember last night? There were not people taking images of the protest. It was very serious. But as I said today, the mood has really changed. People they feel like they have to record, that they want to be a part of history. So they're taking selfies and a lot of souvenir photos. Today it's not that serious protest mood, anti-police, anti-government. It's more like they want a historical record of themselves participating. That's really what it feels. As you can see, this guy right here, another selfie. It's just been, I called it a selfie revolution today because it doesn't feel like an umbrella revolution.
Well, let's timestamp this in the blockchain, so after this video is finished, I can upload this, and we are at block height 323,375, Merkle root beginning 7E094A. So that's it. I've just timestamped this video into the blockchain. There we go. Was that? Oh, that wasn't recording before. So there it is now.
History.
History in the making.
So as you can see, we're using bus stations. You can see the bus number 16. We're using bus barricades to block off the road with sandbags as well.
Yeah, we need to be documenting all of the different methods used, because we don't need to give governments any excuse. And do you think that Xi Jinping, who's the leader of the Chinese Communist Party, is that the reason why he's been so reticent and he hasn't been getting involved much in this debate, because you guys have been so reasonable?
Well, China's they're in a bit of a conundrum. If they react too hard with too much force, it'll just unite the country even further. Then it's already united as it is. All they'll do is unite us together. So they don't want to do that. So they don't want to go violent again. They've seen how the crowds have gone from 50,000 to hundreds of thousands when they use violence. So they have switched tactics, and they're trying to negotiate. That's not working as well, obviously, because they're just being ignored. Everyone's still here. So I believe now they're moving on to another tactic, which is just to see how long we'll endure.
Yeah. Ksenia, did you have anything to add to this?
No, I've been just sitting here feeling awkward about, like, when I see close-ups on people protesting being filmed, I always cringe, because it's like where I come from and just not the way. Yeah, but I'm not going to moan about it, because they can go forever.
Everyone here is filming everyone.
Yeah, I can understand that. I'm just talking about, like, in some instances it's okay, in some other instances it's not okay, and well, that was just my comment. It's more of a feeling. It just feels alien to me.
Actually, that's really interesting to hear, because it might be a cultural thing, because people in Hong Kong love their cameras. You'll see it every meal. They're taking pictures of what they're eating, posting it all the time. It's just, the camera is something that never leaves Hong Kong people, and they just love documenting everything. So I think it's cultural.
Yeah, I mean, it's cultural in my case as well, because, I mean, the challenge for us, I'm from Russia, like a few years ago, was to how do you document it without actually having people's faces.
Right, actually, that's a very good point you made there, because at the volunteer stations, they're asking people who photograph not to photograph their faces at the volunteer stations, because they're students and they don't want people to know who they are. So you are correct. There are certain places that we are asking for the faces not to be filmed, and there are signs up. People, please cooperate with that.
So I think it's good practice to just like be aware of the fact that what can be filmed and documented and what shouldn't, what can be then used against.
Right. When it was raining yesterday, I was everyone was in their tents, and I was in the middle of the road taking pictures, and I kind of felt a bit awkward, you know? I'm like, yeah, so I really understand what you're saying. It does sometimes feel a bit weird, even as I'm doing it now. I feel okay now because everyone's doing it, but when you're like one of only a few people doing it, it does feel a bit weird. It doesn't feel appropriate.
I've seen several media reports that Occupy Central protests are being funded by the U.S. State Department and the National Endowment for Democracy.
Right. They've accused a 17-year-old student of being paid by the U.S. government, and that if this doesn't work, he's got his college fund set up there. I mean, this is all bullshit. I can tell you for a fact, this is all utterly untrue. From the ground, we can see who's supporting us. It's individuals. It's truck drivers taking their day off work to deliver supplies and help us with the logistics. It's doctors and nurses not going to work and instead coming here to help the people who are injured. It's individual vehicles that are coming by, individual families who are coming by and donating food and drinks. So when they say we've got this mysterious foreign benefactor, it just really makes me upset because it's just totally not true. Couldn't be further from the truth.
Yeah, this Benny Tai seems to be a person of controversy, I guess.
He's the guy that started it, right?
Well, you know, there is a bit of controversy. The students here who actually started the demonstrations last Monday feel like Benny Tai has kind of hijacked this movement with his Occupy Central, because just last month Benny Tai declared Occupy Central was pretty much dead. You know, he was quite pessimistic, but it was only after when police started attacking the civilians on Sunday that the whole country started coming out, and they moved forward the Occupy Central movement, which was scheduled for today, October the 1st, and they moved it forward to Monday. And he's kind of taken this leadership role, although it was more of a spontaneous movement, a decentralized movement. And so, yes, a lot of students are a little bit upset with Benny, and they feel like he's kind of just hijacked this whole movement.
Okay, thanks for that.
Yeah, well, there are no leaders in these things. Or put it differently, everyone's a leader in one of these Occupy things. Were you part of the Occupy Wall Street first time around?
No.
Right. I used to go down to St. Paul's. I didn't go there all the time, but I was there quite a lot. And what was interesting was when it first started, it was great because it was true anarchy. Anyone could be a leader. That didn't mean no one was in charge. It's just that legitimacy was earned by the people that brought the most energy to each individual role. So anyone could be head of publicity, or anyone could like help that homeless guy get a claim to this piece of land over here because he'd been there for 10 years and all this kind of thing. And so then it was just, you know, everyone kind of taking part to do it. What tended to happen with Occupy in London certainly was that over time it became more and more like the system it was campaigning against, because people started to get entrenched in their positions, and so then they, collectively invented this kind of hand-waving thing. So if you didn't get time to have your say, someone was speaking, you would just wave your hands to signal either in opposition or in favour of, and then that kind of became old school, and so then people started having private meetings, and as soon as you do that, you get into Kafka territory, and now you're back with the same old system. And so it wasn't, I mean, it wasn't really like sort of libertarian socialism, you know, this idea that you just have all these little villages of about Dunbar's number size, you know, 150 people per village, and then that would kind of form part of a network. What I mean is they're actually private. Like they would actually go off and do things, and then you didn't really get, like, this show is actually called Power and Participation, because when I was looking up all the words for democracy in different languages, obviously it comes from the ancient Greek. We talked about it before, demos, kratos, many people are powerful, but some languages also have this notion of participation in it as well. And one of my kind of gambits to this show was, you know, participation in the progress of power requires thinking at the resolution of the whole system and its parts. Because I think that a lot of what I'm just gonna, James, can you hear me?
I can. Actually, we're seeing that a little bit of that here as well in the 3-4 days in, or if you count the student protest last week, about 10 days in. But during the first couple of
charge there?
That's the thing, you know, the first couple days, it really felt like there was no leader. Everyone was the leader. It really felt decentralized. But now that a couple days have gone by, you kind of, the personalities of people come through, and some people who kind of had a bit of power have kind of increased their power, so to say. So, yeah, I fully understand what you're saying there, even though it's only been a few days. It is noticeable that that's kind of where it's headed, from a totally decentralized, anyone can be a leader, to people kind of keeping their positions and then maintaining that position and making themselves stronger. So I'll give you an example of, there was a controversy today. As you know, I don't know if you guys know, but we've also split up here in Mongkok. It's no longer just Occupy Mongkok. It's also Occupy Chim Sa Choi, which is the probably even bigger district than Mongkok and Kowloon. That is the #1 tourist district in Hong Kong, Chim Sa Choi. And Canton Road, which is where all the luxury brands are located. You name one, it's there. It's like Beverly Hills, basically. That's where the shopping is going to go supposed to go crazy this week. So none of the shops there are actually set up for the locals. They're all jewelry shops like this, the one that you see right here. This is also not catered towards us. If you see Mongkok and places like Chim Sa Choi, they're full of jewelry shops like this and this, Rolex, Rado, luxury shops, which are really catered to the mainland Chinese. So if you look at the places we've occupied, they're all shopping zones for mainland China tourists, not for us local people. And if you actually, there are signs plastered all around Mongkok saying, support your independent retail shops, support the mom and pop shops. There are actually signs around here. So it's not that we're not supporting Hong Kong business, it's more like we're not supporting the international business that's catered towards the China people.
Right. There's some term in economics called beggar thy neighbor, and this is one of the things we're seeing globally, is that real power is local, and if you're actually part of the local community, you're more invested in that community. What we're seeing now is, you think of, I talked about it before, but I'll say it again because it bears repeating, that the global stock market is actually a product of accidentally stumbling upon this technology called global communications network, like the digitization. It began, I usually bring it down at the Jacquard Loom about 1700. You had a binary operating device. And then it didn't take long until people had a Lovelace and so on, until you could start to work out, you could give some pretty deterministic instructions to one of these machines. And then you had Charles Babbage, and you had all that kind of stuff. And now, quite by accident, we've got this global communications network. But of course, a zero-day bug in the human condition, I've always said, is that if you can cheat, you will. And so certain people are brought into life who are given a choice. You can either play by the same rules everyone else plays by, or you can cheat. Which would you choose? Well, of course, given that choice, you're always going to choose the cheating route. And it gets to the point now in the global financial markets where you won't even play unless you can cheat. Right? That's a condition.
Yeah, or unless you can devolve that power to an algorithm, because so many trade days are actually algorithmic. The human factor in the markets is actually pretty small. So that leads us into territories like what, an algorithm has no sense of right or wrong. It just is.
It just is, yeah. It's just disinterested. So this idea, we're seeing it all over the world with this global real estate just going up and up like a bubble, because people are buying this land and these retail centres, like in Hong Kong, just because the people there need it. You're exploiting people's needs rather than helping them with their needs. Right? You're using your empathetic capacity as a human to understand what they need, but then you're twisting the knife and holding it against them, holding themselves at ransom by saying, I know you need this, so I'm just going to keep upping the price as much as I feel I can get away with. And we mentioned yesterday that really in biology, in evolutionary biology, a well-functioning parasite should make itself invisible to the host. The mistake I think a lot of these power structures have now got is that now we can see them thanks to the very technology they've used to try and exploit everyone. They never anticipated this.
It's like shining a light into dark spaces, isn't it? It's
yes. Yeah, exactly. It's a real disinfectant. So, Ksenia, what are you?
I think we're going to see a lot of that happening too with companies like PayPal accepting Bitcoin when people realize that, hey, wait, we're paying a 6 or 7% fee to PayPal, and to use Bitcoin, we can just use Bitcoin directly for 6 cents or 4 cents now or whatever.
Yeah, it's about 2 cents at the moment, and I was using Multibit earlier, and I found out, slightly to my disappointment, that Multibit are now charging about 10 cents a transaction because that's going towards their development fund. And I have to talk to them about that because that's not, I don't think that's the best way for them to get funding, because then you're doing what the financial system is doing and you're charging at the transaction layer. And that tends to grind everything to a halt. What's valuable at the moment is connection between people. People are craving human-to-human experiences. That's what you would crave in a world that's kind of devoid of humanity, right? And so that's the thing, the trust and the eye-to-eye contact and the meet space is what people are paying for. And I think as soon as you start putting friction in that transaction, I think you end up creating hostility. It's not that I don't want to pay the developers of Multibit, I absolutely do. And I did send the transaction anyway once I found out it was going to them. It's just that really, like we've had on this show, you've got to inspire people to pay for what you've got, rather than making them pay.
Yes, you've got to give them that choice. I mean, if people want to pay a premium for a service or a perceived service, then that's their choice, but they have to know they're making that choice.
Yeah, exactly. And it's about believing, like I was having this conversation with a friend of mine the other day, and I don't want to say too much about it on this show because I don't want to mislead anyone, but I'm not a social Darwinist, I'm just going to say that straight away, which should warn you. But I also don't believe in taking state benefits, because I haven't worked for 2 years. A lot of people are saying, why didn't you get the negative interest rate or whatever they call it, right? And I said, well, first of all, I don't believe in parasitism. Like, if I can't feed myself and I die, society should respect my right to die at that point. If society has decided that I don't have anything to give to society, I'd rather just have that out and just go, you know what, I made my capabilities clear, I made my knowledge of my capabilities clear. In spite of my best efforts, you didn't think that I had what I had to offer at this point in history. There you go. Because otherwise, all that happens is you just get put on a shelf to rot, and you get given this kind of crack lolly. And actually, Vinay Gupta has this wonderful line where he says that the state benefit is kind of they're paying you off not to become a revolutionary. That's kind of to sedate you and to get you on the state. James? I wasn't sure if James wanted to come in on that point. There we go. Okay, he's left us. So I don't mean to be. I don't want to be overly dramatic or overly sad or anything. It's just that I really believe that it's really more dialogue needs to be had. And if someone is struggling to find their purpose in life, putting them in a job they hate really is not the solution, because that's another way of killing someone. Whether you take 2 years out of someone's life in their 20s, or whether you take it out at the end of their life just before they die, you're still killing them, right? You're still robbing them of their fecundity. You're robbing them of their ability to grow. You're robbing them of their ability to bring ideas to the table, and that's what I think we're craving right now. Now that you've got the internet, no one's got an excuse anymore.
I think I'm not entirely convinced that I totally share that view, but at the same time, I think that governments, ours included, are all too happy to have people sitting there on benefits and often sedating them as well. The number of antidepressants and tranquilizers that are prescribed people here is quite frightening, because it's an easier option for the government in many ways to have people sitting passively.
But they don't have a choice now, because we're running out.
I'm one of those people, actually. So it's not doing that great of a job, and I actually have been diagnosed with bipolar disorder. And that's why I don't work a day job anymore, but I take those medications, and it doesn't affect my ability to speak out, but it does greatly help me for stabilizing my mood, because I did have a serious problem with my mood levels swinging all over the place. And I know there's several people that have come out saying, well, there's no scientific blood tests or anything you can do for bipolar disorder or for depression. And I was mistreated as just having depression for about 10 years, and it was horrible. But when I finally got a doctor that diagnosed it as bipolar disorder and got on medications for that, it greatly helped me, and it's been a lot better since then. But I feel a person should take advantage of what's available out there, and I'm anti-government, but I'm not going to deny something that's available to me. I feel I paid into the system for many years, and I'm going to take it back if I can.
No, for me, I have to have faith that if I display what I'm good at, and that's why I put everything on Twitter every time I have an idea, it goes straight onto Twitter, I don't keep it for myself, then I've got no excuse. If somebody somewhere finds what I've got valuable, that connection should be made as quickly with as minimal latency as possible. The problem we had with the old system is that if you cornered the information and controlled the information, you also controlled all the actions and behaviors of the people inside of that system. That really the only difference between reality and virtual reality is the quantity and quality of information. So you could just put people in a school system. Let's just take one example, right? So let's take the school system, and you could teach them to get up at 8 o'clock 7 o'clock every morning, get to work for 9, to have this kind of 6-hour day. And you had this examiner, and the examiner knew everything. The world apparently is knowable, and the examiner knows that world. And if only you get the right answers. And this is what the world is like. And of course, the world isn't like that. But if you teach people and you put these people through these drills for 16 years, and then you say, right now, here's the world, well, of course, that's going to taint the way you live your life. And I'm just thinking, well, that just creates this clumpy viscose of information that clumps around the captains of industry and the people that own the means of production. But now, with the dissemination of information that's widely spread across society, we all own the means of our production. This can be one of these things. I can be a writer, a journalist, a photographer. So many professions are crammed into these devices, into this laptop, that I'm pretty much free and available. But that freedom comes with huge sense of responsibility. And I'm noticing, particularly as we're in London, we're in Google Campus today, where we have many startups, and these startups, in quotes, have these pitch events that I've been to many of them. People are craving autonomy. They're craving the ability to get their ideas recognized and out there. But when you go to these pitching events, albeit they're very good ideas, you're often put up in front of a panel of aristocrats, venture capitalists. And they kind of like make you work for these arbitrary KPIs. I even within 5 minutes of getting in this building, I heard the word KPI. And for those of you who don't know, it stands for
Key Performance Indicator.
Key Performance Indicator. You've got to make sure you're hitting your numbers, because if you're not hitting your numbers, you're a nobody. You're not successful. You're a failure in life, right? So the KPIs are these arbitrary metrics that are set by your investor. And often your investor will say things to you like, you're not solving a problem. And what he's talking about is his problem. He needs to turn his investment into 5 times return in 2 years, right? That's his problem. He'll dress it up and he'll say stuff like, and it usually is a he, he'll say stuff like, oh, you know, out there, you know, the people have got a problem, and you've got to solve that problem using lean methodology. Lean, look it up, Eric Ries. And the lean methodology says, you know, just start with an MVP, minimum viable product. You've got to know the buzz terms. If you don't know the buzz terms, you're never going to fit in. Minimum viable products, you've got to have a prototype, rapid prototype, get it out there, get it really, really cheap, cut down all your things. The reason they want you to believe all this shit, they don't want you to be lean because that's an effective way of producing a great product. They want you to be lean because it saves them money. Okay.
Yes and no. Yes and no. I don't know. I think there's a lot to be said for some of the ideas behind lean methodologies, but I think often the money people in these situations maybe conflate lean with with cutting costs.
Yeah.
The actual lean philosophy isn't really about cutting costs. It's about working quickly and effectively, and there's plenty in, if you want to read about some lean meetings methodology. I was actually thinking about that when you were talking about occupiers and rules and ways of making sure everybody gets heard, and there's actually quite a lot in lean about how you get everybody's voices heard and things like that, which doesn't really come out when you hear maybe venture capitalists talking about what lean means. It's about it is about more than that. But yeah, I take your point. If you don't know the buzzwords, I mean, key performance indicator, it's just a metric, isn't it? It's nothing mysterious about it, but then it instantly makes people who don't know what a KPI is feel marginalized, small, whatever, like all jargon does.
Yeah, pseudo jargon.
Yes.
But the thing I didn't like about the lean was that it was basically just Scrum. It was basically a form of agile project management that had basically been rebranded. And I don't have a problem with the rebranding necessarily. It's just that there's a dishonesty. The conversation I overheard earlier was a developer talking to a sales guy, and the developer arguing for the conceptual integrity of the product, and the sales guy doing what normal salespeople do, which is, but the only reason we're selling this stuff for free is so that they get onto the product earlier, so that we can convert them later. And the guy's saying, no, but don't convert them too early, because if you convert them in sales term, every non-customer of your business, and that's what they're called, non-customers. They're not called people. They're not called, Rhian or Chris. They're called non-customers, and they fall into two categories: buyers and non-buyers. That's it. That's all you're dealing with. Either they're paying you or they're not paying you, and your job is to convert them in the funnel, the sales funnel. It's like a funnel shape. And you've got a big funnel at the top, at the opening of the funnel, that's everyone. And as you get down into the funnel, the number of conversions goes down. And your job as a salesperson is to make more people buy. So essentially, you're talking about psychological manipulation. This is supply-side dominant economics, where I find something in the ground, and then sell, 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 make you buy it. Well, because I've got sunk cost now. I bought this shit, I coded this up. You have to buy it. You have to buy it. And I'm going to employ whatever methods necessary, as long as I can get away with it, for you to buy this thing. And we saw this in China, because we had all these young people moving out of rural areas into university. And the speculation was, well, what's the first thing you do when you get disposable income?
Well, you spend it on consumer goods, don't you?
And specifically soap. You clean yourself. One of the first things you do when you get disposable income. So the speculation was that these young people will start going out and buying detergents and hair. So all these kind of investors on Wall Street were going out and buying stocks in companies, chemical manufacturers. They went right up the supply chain to the point of entry. And I don't know the full story, because I kind of heard about it from a few different sporadic sources, and I don't want to speak out of turn on this show, but essentially this is the way the financial system operates, is that it understands some need over here. It gives itself the controlling interest in that market by buying up a monopoly in particular supply chains. And then often, I'll take a real case example, LinkedIn. They generate what's called rent scarcity. So they say, well, if you want to send a LinkedIn mail, that's going to cost you $4 a LinkedIn mail. And they only give you a certain number a month. And that did actually, in the case of LinkedIn with the in-mails, it did actually produce quite a good side effect of getting through to people. If you're a salesperson and you need someone to buy your product, if you send them an email, they're never going to reply, because they get tons of emails, right? You, as a salesperson, you want to get through to the decision maker, because that's the person that's going to make a decision. But the people that are decision makers then surround themselves with an entourage of people to act as a buffer to all the salespeople. So LinkedIn then came in and offered you a product that could take you straight to the decision maker, but it would cost you $4 a time. And for me, this is not what I would call systems resolution thinking. Like, you're not thinking about the whole picture. Everyone's trying to pull in different directions, but if we all just took a step back and thought about what's really going on here, we could do away with all this rent seeking and all of this kind of, there's just no need for it.
Yeah, well, people evolve, technology evolves, ultimately people are going to take advantage of this. It's just we're in this massive transitional period now.
But I think more people are kind of going to wake up to it, and I think over time, these governments, I think they're going to be really struggling, because one of the quotes I heard on BBC earlier on from somebody from the Beijing government actually said that if these people in Hong Kong think they're going to separate themselves from China, they are indulging in fantasy, in quotes. And first of all, I haven't actually heard any rhetoric about seceding from China from any protester in Hong Kong, but that may be how it's coming across to the government in Beijing. They may actually see this as a secession project, that they want to secede from China proper. And because, you know, people got, like we saw in the French Revolution, like we saw in Athens under the rule of Cleisthenes, once you give people a taste of freedom, there ain't no going back. Right? Epicurus said about this, you know, Epicurus, if he were here, he would say, don't book that first class ticket, because as soon as you do, you'll never want to travel economy again. Think very carefully, because once you get attached to your lifestyle, it's not that you can't go back, it's that you won't go back. And if you're faced with the prospect of cutting down from 3 meals a day to 2 meals a day, or whatever it happens to be, or traveling on the public transport rather than in a taxi if you've always been used to doing that way, you'll start to become corrupt. You'll start to make decisions that perhaps if the network will be able to see you making those decisions, might frown on. Something you wouldn't want it to be public.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a transitional period that we're talking about here. This stuff doesn't happen overnight. And, you know, I think it's going to take generations for this stuff to happen.
Now, Ksenia, you were talking a little bit earlier about the leaderless movements and the impact they have on networks. And have you got a point that you want to make about the roles and responsibilities of leaderless organizations? Because obviously it is important that you know who to go to when you've got a problem.
Oh, I sort of, I've been sitting here thinking along the lines of what you were talking about, and several thoughts popped up. Like, one of the thoughts I had from a discussion with a bunch of interesting and intelligent people is, it might be a bit philosophical, but let's say we mentioned governments as managers, and like leadership is like having a manager, basically. So this difficult question for me is whether I might not trust government, but whom do I trust to run a hospital, for instance? So, for instance, if I look at Occupy movement and even people I respect, I'm thinking, but can this person really run a hospital? For instance, I'm now going through a discussion with a person I respect, and asking this person to resolve a certain minor conflict which arose within a minor, mediocre network. And this person turns around to me and says, well, I have to deal with this world problem. Well, I kind of almost making up this story, but it's, I don't want to mention names. So there are these amazing armchair philosophers talking about Ebola, talking about world problems, etc., unable to solve a tiny little conflict which arises within an organization because they don't have time. They have to, you know, they have to monitor Ebola or something somewhere. And my question is, and I was kind of brought up by anarchists in a way, in like squats in Moscow and stuff, and I saw so many people being sort of knowing all these world problems, thinking global, but I always was wondering, can they actually run a shop? So that's what kind of scares me, because there is this stage of excitement when I saw some movements, they're really well organized, and there is like things are really well organized, and there's food, and there is like Medicare and stuff. When, for instance,
do you see someone picking up rubbish, going around collecting rubbish?
Yes, and I saw this kind of organizations, sort of leaderless movements who really thought they shit out well, but when it comes down to complex systems, for instance, let's take, there is a system that we can overtake and run it for a while, but if we think of like 30, 40, like 50 years, can we really run it? Can a leaderless movement run a transportation system efficiently? Or okay, we can collect rubbish on the streets, but can we recycle it? Can we what happens when the sewage breaks down, you know, and all drowned in shit and stuff. I'm talking about, can we run infrastructures efficiently without any kind of alternative management, which is an alternative to government? Can we distributedly run physical infrastructures? That's what I'm quite interested in.
A good example would be something like piloting. So you wouldn't want the distribution of pilot's license to be decentralized the way Bitcoin is right now, because you don't have good quality enough information flows in the system. We have something like LinkedIn, like we talked about, which does have reputation systems, but you wouldn't want to base that on piloting on that.
That's quite a good example, yeah.
I disagree.
Go on.
I think if you look at the way, they've done experiments where they've taken all the traffic lights out, and traffic flows just fine. You're not going to get all these irresponsible pilots in the air that people fear. Or if you dissolve governments, it's not going to just turn into chaos like everybody fears. I'm not going to go out and just start killing people just because the president is gone. Or you're not gonna. It's a lot of fear-mongering that people have been brainwashed into thinking. I don't think that I'm not going to go out and get in an airplane that I don't know how to fly just because you don't need to have the Federal Aerospace Administration or whatever.
Well, I get your point. I totally agree that governments are there to just scare us into the idea that if they don't manage, then no one will be able to. I'm just thinking of like practical. I mean, it doesn't necessarily need to be government. If someone else can pay someone to clean the sewage and take care of hospitals, then it's fine. But then what happens at the moment is, like, government, for instance, can privatize something, like what happened in Sweden at the moment. Everything was run by a state, then they decided to privatize it, they sold it to whatever poxy companies, and that's where it becomes disaster. But there is always a question of leadership, of who runs the place, who runs the shop. Because, I mean, I'm quite romantic when it comes down to leaderless stuff, but when you walk into the shop and you ask, but who's fucking responsible for cleaning this place? You know?
What I've seen in leaderless places like that is the natural leaders kind of rise up. If you're in a group of people, say you get together with a group of your friends, how do you decide which bar you're going to go out drinking or whatever? I mean, you kind of come to a group consensus and go.
Yes.
You don't.
But I think it's an illusion of consensus, because I believe that I written it in chat that hierarchies is kind of, they're so natural to just world and universe that they just arise. The truth is someone taking leadership. For instance, it's a good example I always make, and you made as well. When people are looking, it kind of looks like a crowd, and everyone goes to the pub, and then everyone is lost. No one knows where they're going, and then one person going to say, "Ooh, I know, I recognize that," and everyone follows this person. And as long as danger disappears, everyone becomes like leaderless crowd again. So this leadership just sort of the hierarchy arises. And the trouble is with, for instance, instances when there is no leadership, is that really dodgy leaders come in. As we see, for instance, the example of, sorry, talking about my lunchbox again, thinking of Russia, we had a taste of freedom, and then people got so shit scared that they, elected whatever, they allow someone who's a complete nutcase to move and to rule the country as a complete thug, and they're very happy with it. And same dynamic happens very often after some certain weird period of kind of freedom, which someone portrays as insecurity, you know? So how do you practically solve this thing?
And the psychopaths tend to be very good at being charismatic and rising up to those leadership positions, and people have to just be very wary of those type of people, I think. I mean, I think the best thing to do is to stay in smaller groups and do things on a smaller group where you know everybody personally, and not have these great big massive people. Like I'd said yesterday on the show, how can somebody, you know, govern or whatever that you've never met? How can they make rules on your life? They don't even know you.
So you're talking about a mixture between anarchy and delegatory democracy, which is like a perfect political structure we would like to have.
But, you know, I just think of, you know, I watch the squirrels out here a lot and see how they interact. And I think of, you know, if I get together with a group of my friends, we don't have an elected leader or whatever or anything, and or how we interact on the internet with each other.
Scale, and we started off with TCP/IP, and we got HTTP, and then we had some other important protocols come along, and the open source GNU movement was a vital part of that, with Richard Stallman and Linus Torvalds with Linux. And one of the important incentive structures of Bitcoin is that when you download the code, it's been signed with the lead developer's PGP key, so you can trust that it's legitimate code. Everyone's running the same code, and you independently verify all of the transactions going back 5 years. And this is important because now you are responsible.
Yeah, I think that's the key tenet. And coming back directly to Bitcoin, I just think that's one of the most important things to communicate to people. I think people are scared of the idea of taking financial responsibility. And while it's not really our job to lecture people or to force them to take decisions, I firmly believe that it's our duty to inform them of ways that they can become empowered.
Yeah, and I think at the moment the case just isn't being made because you have, like, a lot of people at the moment are talking about the Bitcoin price. I wish they'd stop, but whatever, we can't do anything about it. They're talking about the Bitcoin price, and I said, look, the fact is that the information has been priced in already. There's no point in waiting for Bitcoin's price to go up on the, you know, that when people learn about this, they'll buy it too. Because that's why you buy things in a speculative market. You buy things in a speculative market not because you think it has value, but because you think someone else will once they've got the information you have got. Price rises, the exponential price increases like we saw back in November, are a function of one group of people having more information than another group. Because the first group of people that get that information rise the price up, and then after they've bought it, tell everyone else in the hope that they'll buy them out.
Yeah, and that obscures true price discovery, of course, because even if it's not conscious manipulation, it has that effect. And that's what happens when knowledge becomes concentrated in the hands of a very few people.
Yes, exactly. So just to bring it back to where we started from, I just want to make everyone aware of your, you know, what you do as well, Rhian. Like,
thank you.
You've got, it's all about promoting, you know, promoting everyone here. So tell us a little bit about Count My Crypto.
It's a cryptocurrency portfolio tracker that I developed with a friend and colleague, originally as a way for us to keep track of our own altcoin investments. But then we decided it was useful, so other people should use it as well. So that's kind of where we're at with it. It's, see, zero. I should have prepared a nice little.
The price has crashed, everyone. Everyone, it's too late. You can't sell now.
Yeah, so I'm one of the developers at Count My Crypto. I don't want to sort of plug my own site, my own project too much, but if I could mention London Bitcoin Women as well. I know we've talked about it already.
We're not being paid to do this. I don't. People do contact me asking for paid endorsements. I don't do paid endorsements. I only do cool endorsements. So what's the name of the meetup group exactly?
It's Bitcoin London. If you just search for Meetup London Bitcoin Women, I can never. It's the other way around from the site.
You've got a branding problem. You need to get on top of the branding.
Yeah. There we are.
Where is it?
Scroll.
Oh, there we go. Great.
Yeah.
Okay, let me get this up on screen for everyone so they can see it.
It's happening on Tuesday, people. London's first London Women in Bitcoin meetup, inspired by Anna's Berlin girls' night out, and we want anyone who's interested, and obviously female, to come along, learn about Bitcoin if they don't know already, network with others in the space, and just have a really good time. We're having it at Old Shoreditch Station, which London Bitcoin people will know. There's an ATM there. You can pay with Bitcoin. So the idea is for newbies coming along, we'll get them set up with a wallet. They can buy maybe £5–10 worth of Bitcoin from the ATM, buy a couple of drinks with it, get used to the idea. We've got a Bitcoin Girls Night Out t-shirt to give away, courtesy of Michelle Seven. We've got swag, and we're hoping to have a really nice night next Tuesday.
Really cool.
I just wanted to say thanks, Chris, for letting me come on and talk about it. Magda and I really appreciate it.
So are you going to be enforcing the gender dichotomy at the door? Is there going to be a bouncer at the door?
I'm hoping we won't need to.
If your name's not on the list,
I'm hoping that's kind of appealing to people's better natures will work in this context. And you know, it's possible that further down the line we might look at something like some of the Girl Geek meetups and so on have a 1+1 rule, which is that men can come, but as long as they're part of a +1. So that you always have minimum 50% balance.
That's cool.
You know, I mean, I know that a lot of people aren't comfortable with this idea of affirmative action, but I just think anything that gets more women, more people in general into the space has got to be worth trying. And if we can provide a welcoming and fun environment for people to find out about Bitcoin.
I don't have any strong opinions on affirmative action. I'm slightly against it because I think that it undermines the project's long-term aim, which is that we shouldn't even be talking about this. And the fact that you even talk about people in terms of arbitrary definitions like gender or hair color even. I mean, why not talk about hair color? Only blonde people can turn up to this meetup. It feels very arbitrary and superficial and based on people's historical perceptions of behaviours and patterns that they've seen in the environment. I've noticed that there are a few women in coding, therefore women can't be coders. And then when it starts to get into those power structures, leaders will actually use that. Like if you look at the top of like fascist organisations, particularly neo-fascist organisations, what you find is that the leaders of those groups are actually very intelligent. But they use the lack of intelligence on the part, often it's been characterised as the working class people. They will get a little bit of truth and they'll wrap it up in a big lie. And they will perpetrate this, you know, the reason you're losing your jobs is because of all these foreigners coming over. And they are well aware as the leaders that that is not true, but they use the people on the ground's lack of knowledge. And I think there's an element of that in patriarchy too, particularly Simone de Beauvoir talks about the fact that women are their own worst enemy, that actually a lot of misogyny comes from women themselves. And that's actually one of the reasons why women find it difficult to get equality. My view at the minute is that if we just stop talking about this, please.
Yeah, that's some victim blaming just a little bit, but I know, I mean, you've just got to look at the Daily Mail to kind of maybe see a few examples of that.
Examples of what?
I agree.
Go ahead.
I agree with Chris. Yeah, it seemed like it was just counterproductive to, you know, recategorize and have quotas to hire people and stuff based on sex and skin color, to eliminate discrimination against sex and skin color. It was just completely the opposite of what should be done. We should just quit talking about it. And now, like the word racism and calling somebody a racist has pretty much lost its meaning, because now, and like the iPhone thing, PyRebel was tweeting out yesterday that the women were complaining that the new iPhone is too big, therefore it's sexist.
Well, what we're talking about here, though, because remember, context is important.
So it's not sexist.
Say that again?
No, nothing, sorry. Just a random comment.
It was just...
didn't get anything about the size of an iPhone.
Is that the iPhone pad thing, that massive thing? Or is it the regular?
The big iPhone was too big for women to hold and take selfies, so therefore it was sexist, and they were tweeting out that the agony of a woman living in a world where their phone was designed by a man.
Yeah, well.
But the context that I agree with you, Jamie, on the specifics of affirmative action as it's been used, particularly in America. But what we're talking about here is a specific context where we're talking about a culture of programmers, so-called, within the Bitcoin community. So I think in this context and in this way, you're not dealing with KPIs or any kind of metrics. You're not trying to hit a number. You're just trying to create a space where women feel welcome.
Yeah, and it's not even about, it's not even saying anything about programmer culture or anything like that. It's not kind of, I'm not being, I go to general Bitcoin meetups. I have a great time. A lot of my friends are guys in the Bitcoin space. I've never had issues myself, ever. I've always been very welcomed, not patronized. Just want to make that completely clear, that it's not about having a women-only space as a reaction to something that's happened to me or Magda personally. But thinking about advertising again and the imitative nature of humans, if women just see women in Bitcoin, they're aware of this as a thing.
Yes.
You know, it's a subconscious thing. I think that does attract more women into the space. And, you know, thinking about something like the Berlin Bitcoin community where we have the girls' nights, well, everybody who goes to the girls' nights also goes to the mixed things as well. It's not a kind of either-or.
Yeah, so you're not being like a government where people are being born into your system and they can't get out. This is a voluntary system where, you can turn up for one night.
That's the key. That's the key right there. It's a voluntary system.
Yeah, and it's the freedom of association, and that's a very important point. So yeah, I mean, you're persuading me. I think I think it's definitely a good idea, and we should also encourage more groups of people that perhaps don't feel very welcome in this community. And we're doing our best, and the World Crypto Network itself is proving to be quite a cool self-select group of people. We're getting people from everywhere. We've got a few people from Thailand, we've got some people from Ghana, we've got some people from South America, we've got people from everywhere of all different walks of life. But one thing we tend to have in common, though, is we tend to be daydreamers, thinkers, procrastinators, ADHDers, geeks, programmers, but of all different
bullshitters.
You know, and it's almost like, there's someone else out there like me, you know, there's someone else who thinks the way I think, and it's not so much about the knowledge that we have, it's our attitude towards knowledge.
Yeah, it's the somebody like me factor.
Yeah, exactly.
And if people see women in Bitcoin and think, oh, I might go along to that, see what that's all about. If one person does that, we've succeeded.
Yeah, no, absolutely. More power to you. So, yeah, definitely check out Rhian, or get rid of that price graph up there. So people can follow you here at Count My Crypto, and also you are, of course it's down in our little bottom third as well, and also you are at Rhian_is on Twitter. So do we have any final thoughts from the panel today? No.
Well, I think I thought James has been doing a wonderful job in Hong Kong there. Fortunately, he wasn't injured too badly and was able to continue on in his little altercation, but I'm just amazed at how peaceful, and they're cleaning up the garbage over there. They're not being water cannoned or tear gassed anymore. They had that slight altercation, so it's really nice to be able to have somebody on the ground there in real time, finding out what's really going on, and we're able to, check these news stories and reports we're seeing from media outlets with him and see what the real story is actually there.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
James, can you hear us?
I can, yes. The connection's been perfect this whole time.
Oh, so go ahead, give us a final summary.
Well, today and yesterday you've seen Occupy Mongkok and Nathan Road. So tomorrow I'm planning on crossing over to the Hong Kong Island, where you'll get to see Occupy Causeway Bay, Occupy Admiralty, Wan Chai, and Occupy Central. So that might be a really interesting walking all the way from Causeway Bay through the 4 different zones ending up in Central. So that's something I would like to do tomorrow, if anyone else is free.
Yeah, and then we've had some people comment as well whilst we've been on air saying it's a really good example. Omar is saying it's a really good example of a good protest. Dan wants your opinion, or anyone's opinion, I guess, on this article in The Guardian, which is China is Hong Kong's future, not its enemy. I don't know what this guy is trying to say by this, but we're going to be covering this a lot over the next few days, so you can always send it to James for your perusal, and then you can maybe answer this in another show, maybe.
Well, I think I've seen China moving more and more towards capitalism. And
We'll do that.
Yeah, great. Go ahead, Jamie.
I said I think we've seen China moving more and more towards capitalism, and I think somebody said it yesterday, maybe it was Theo, about how the Western world and China are moving closer and closer towards economic policies, and I think China has lightened up a lot on, I mean, just this financial district here that James is in is geared towards Chinese customers. So obviously they have money to spend.
Yeah, absolutely. And also we've got an article suggestion which I'll put in the description after the show here from Ajan, who's in Thailand. So I'm going to get this up. Hong Kong's umbrella revolution has a truly complex leadership. So that was back to when we were talking about leaderless organizations. Now, do we have any other comments of this? Mitch from Ghana is saying that the level of quality, the videos that James is shooting isn't really good enough to see people's faces anyway, so that's a good point. You just get a good enough sense of kind of what's going on. Anything else? Occupy.hk, stand by you. Let me get this website up also from Dan Han. Let's do that.
Yeah, you can just kind of see how they're just sitting there and not really causing any trouble. They're just sitting there. And every once in a while somebody will come over the loudspeaker and, you know, talk.
You can go ahead and say...
You're absolutely right, Jamie. That's all it's been. We've just been peacefully sitting here.
Well, that's really great. So, yeah, we've got this website here that Dan Han is suggested to us, occupy.hk/standbyu. So check that out. I'll put that in the show notes as well. And, yeah, so I think we should just wrap it up now. Ksenia, do you have any final thoughts?
No.
Fair enough. So yeah, so thanks a lot for being with us today. We're going to be following this Hong Kong story as the days go on. Big thanks to James Bang for being out there for us and collecting. Let's look at your face on screen. We haven't seen you the whole show. You've been pointing the camera the wrong way. So yeah, big thanks, James, for taking the risk.
I have, yeah.
You've been taking some risks out there, and
You're welcome.
Already suffered yourself a little bit of a casualty.
Thank you guys as well.
Very cool, very cool. Just having connectivity issues at the end, we were doing so well. And yeah, big thanks to Jamie, Theo, Ksenia, and Rhian as well for joining us. That'll be really cool. Hope to see you again. You're welcome anytime at all. Yeah, please follow us at WorldCryptoNet on Twitter. We've got the Bitcoin Talk Show coming up later, and you can follow me at Mr. Chris Ellis and at Rhian_is right there. Talk to you next time. Bye-bye.